32 seconds of logos. Reading. Also, movie is inspired by true events that are never explained what exact events they were. I assume the writers just decided to put that in just to make it more dramatic. And mission failed.
It was unbelievable.
Opening credit sequence over a series of movies/TV shows on an old school TV just to show the fact that the events of this movie takes place in the 1960s. Also, absolutely nothing about anything shown on the TV is even remotely related to what goes on in this movie. You couldn't have added in something about kids being bullied at school. Hell, someone could easily walk into the theater unknown of what they were about to watch, see this opening credit sequence and assume that it's about early to mid-1900s history, which it's not. Also, who the hell is flipping through all these channels?
It has often been said that children are cruel.
Try all the time, actually. Also, just as we went through logos, reading, and an unrelated opening credit sequence, we are completing the annoyance of movies with narration. Also, we can clearly hear you. We don't need to see actual text of the words you're saying. Or is this the screenwriter literally reciting what he's typing and has somehow made it to the final cut?
So goes the tale of Big G.
Big G? You mean the Big G? The legend himself? This should be absolutely phenomenal! If I even knew who the hell that was in the first place. If you're gonna try and tell true stories, we should at least know some hints about the real-life people the characters portrayed. Ed Harris is literally the only good thing about this movie, but even he can't save the terribleness. This is definitely not a believable scene because there's not even one kid looking like he's bored out of his mind. Or maybe all the actors didn't know that their teacher would be portrayed by Ed Harris and the filmmakers captured their stunned reactions and put it in the film.
There is only one course?
Big G had a head.
This annoying narrator interrupting Mr. Simon's reading. Hell, I'd rather listen to Mr. Simon reading Joan of Arc than this asshole narrator.
Did I say children were cruel?
This narrator doesn't remember what he said literally 50 seconds ago.
I have decided to pair you up myself.
Teacher says he will pair up his students to their utter dismay cliche.
Miss Tyler will be working with Mr. Wiley.
Mr. Random Name will also be working with Miss Random Name.
Mr. Nickel will be working with Mr. Minor.
If I'm being perfectly honest, it was difficult for me to even watch this movie. Not because it's bad, but because it brings back sad memories of my school days because I was bullied 24/7 for 15 plus years. Bullies are demons.
So please don't disappoint me.
This is exactly what Ed Harris told the creators of this movie once he was cast as Mr. Simon. Sadly, he ended up being disappointed.
I'm not a very good writer.
Underneath the poor grammar and the atrocious spelling,
Well, at least Mr. Simon was honest about Andy being a bad writer.
the heart and soul of a great writer.
We're led to believe that this movie is about Andy being a bad writer and becoming one of the all-time great writers in this school by the end, which honestly sounds more entertaining than this. But it's not even brought up again after this scene, until the very end when we have forgotten all about it completely. Hell, the movie is titled That's What I Am, in reference to Andy being a writer. It's as if the creators of this movie failed to realize they didn't come up with a title for the story and randomly chose a line with no effect on the actual plot. This movie is about dealing with bullies and a teacher being called out for possibly being homosexual. This doesn't have anything to do with being a writer.
Well, if you enjoy something and you're good at it, you must define yourself as...
I am a sinner, that's what I am.
Let's try that again. Stand up straight.
What, is Ed Harris the director of this movie or something, and him telling this kid to repeat the scene accidentally got added into the final product?
I am a writer, that's what I am.
Roll credits.
Now go, Andrew. And write.
Don't forget to never bring this up or mention this conversation ever again.
At least in the
Bullying is the ultimate sin of real life.
unfortunate.
Where's Billy Madison bragging about wetting your pants is what the cool kids do when you need them?
I want a sandwich!
What the fuck does this have to do with the movie?
Candy bar? Candy bar. Are you nuts?
This kid unintentionally made a candy bar pun.
Why don't you just cut off my arm and snack on that, Sam?
Promoting cannibalism.
Do you know where Big G is? Why? A little on cooties?
Norman is Stanley's best friend, and even he is joining the club of the assholes believing that he's carrying possible cooties, which don't even exist in the first place.
He's not like anyone else. Never mind.
Because I bet even the screenwriters had no idea what to have Norman say. Could have been the first dramatic moment of this drama, and it was blown. Oh no, Andy just stepped into Geek Corner. That's the biggest shocker of this film. Wait, it actually is?
You know what a jughead is?
Someone who's really stupid?
Oh, buddy, you're not stupid.
Actually, the definition of jughead really is someone who's very stupid. Who's the jughead now?
A jughead is someone who just doesn't pay attention.
The creators of this movie are all jugheads if that is the case.
Ricky Brown is a very cruel boy.
Is Ricky Brown that big of a celebrity to the point where Andy's mom knows about his bullying tactics upon getting mentioned? Does every other parent know about that as well? And if so, how has Ricky not gotten expelled yet?
Yeah, I can also kill myself.
Sarcasm about suicide. Also, why are these assholes walking in the middle of the freaking road? There are sidewalks on both sides of the street, too.
Hey, did you hear about Simon winning that car?
What does that have to do with this movie? Is there any plot to this at all?
There she is.
Andy plays the pronoun game just so we have to ask who she is, and even when we do find out who she is, we're still asking that. I neither know nor give a crap about pre-teenage romance. That's not why I watched this film.
Was the preeminent makeout artist in the 8th grade class.
No offense, but this movie is making Mary Clear sound like a whore. That's even worse than pre-teenage romance.
Homelier.
That one moment when you realize that this film's events would have never happened if Jason Frio didn't accidentally run into Karen Connor and start making a big fit about getting cooties and dying.
The only one who stood his ground was the stork.
We're likely going to forget all about this guy after this one appearance, aren't we?
From this, the cooties came. With this, the cooties shall remain.
You're an idiot.
You gotta do it on her territory.
Geek corner?
Earlier, the narrator said that your reputation would be destroyed to the point of no return if you even put one foot into Geek Corner. And yet Jason's reputation still remained when he stepped into Geek Corner. Who makes up these rules? Don't tell me it was the Stork the entire time. No. Also, what the fuck was that about?
I can't make them be nice people. And even if I did, there'd be others to take their place.
Sad truth about life. Sad, sad truth. Fuck. There's not a lot of good moments about this film, but the intensity of this scene alone after witnessing what Jason did to Karen made this hard for me to watch. Showed some realism of bullying and the effects it gives people. I've been traumatized by my history of being bullied to the point where I gotta calm myself down while watching these type of movies. This is a real life reaction.
I really don't feel much like teaching today.
After watching that intense scene, I really don't feel much like sinning today. But unfortunately, I have to. Andy intentionally misses Mary's door just to get a chance to be a creepy bastard.
Maybe I'm just a little tired by the time I get here.
Or potentially horny for your daughter.
Big G is gonna...
Andy refers to Stanley as Big G in front of his assistant principal, and she doesn't so much as tell him to not call Stanley that name. Even Andy's mom reprimanded him for that, but as usual, the principal doesn't give a shit.
Don't you ever watch cop shows? You have the right to remain silent?
The events of this film takes place in 1965, judging by a date shown on the chalkboard at the beginning. Norman brings up the phrase, "You have the right to remain silent" from cop shows. But one problem, the Miranda rights didn't even exist until 1966, much less appear on cop shows.
We sing in that stupid show and it's just gonna make it worse for the rest of us.
How?
You shouldn't swear, Norman.
Go to hell!
Best friend my ass.
Mary Clear likes you.
Because reasons. That and the film is making Mary look like someone who's on a mission to date every boy in the entire school before graduation.
How's it going with you?
Skip!
I gotta get going.
I can't believe I would ever say this about pre-teenage romance in my Sins videos, but gosh darn it, ask her out already! You mean to tell me that Ricky Brown was waiting for Andy to show up just so he can take his paper collecting? That's cruel as it is creepy. Nobody notices this.
You shut up.
I bet you never kissed a girl in your life.
What are we even doing right now? None of Ricky's gang is kicking Jason's ass for stepping into Geek Corner. So much for one step into that territory and there's no going back.
You know, my dad says Simon's a homo.
Because of perfectly timed eavesdropping on the part of Jason Frio, the rest of this movie can happen. Took over half an hour for the only interesting part of the plot to appear. That's Slide.
You're saying I'd have to be a Negro to understand it?
The fuck? Jason runs straight into a house that, while is the home of one of his friends, is not his place. Without knocking. What an asshole.
What exactly is a homo?
This sequence is repeated when Andy asks the same thing. The reporter on the TV is clearly narrating events of the Tet Offensive and the Battle of Khe Sanh. I don't even know if I said that right. Both of which took place in 1968. In a movie that takes place in 1965. That's twice that this error has come up.
Did you finish your homework, honey?
Yeah.
Liar. You literally just told your father 10 seconds ago that you had homework to finish, then proceeded to walk into the living room to see your mother.
It doesn't last long, though.
Judging by the long-ass list of boys Mary Clear has gone out with, that's the understatement of the year.
Did you want him to find out in school from the other kids?
Yeah.
Dick.
I'm gonna monitor the situation until I know exactly what the hell is going on.
Jim never does. You remember when WWE promoted Randy Orton's role in this movie out the ass as if he was the lead star? Well, as it turns out, he doesn't appear for the first 42 minutes and has less than 5 minutes of screen time throughout this whole film. Starring Randy Orton my ass. That was just a couple of cameos. I know this is for background music only, but if you're doing a movie taking place in the 1960s, at least put in music that was actually popular in that era. Come and Get It by Eli Reed was literally released in 2010, a year before this film's release.
I hope you have some proof.
I've got my boy's word.
That's not proof.
I'll go to the papers if I have to.
You know, if this movie actually focused more on Randy Orton trying to put Ed Harris out of a teaching job just because of a homosexual rumor, then I'd probably be more interested. But this was all talk and no game.
I needed an ID bracelet.
I literally had to read so many books on ID bracelets and the world of dating in the 1950s before writing any sins for this one. And Jesus, back in the day, if you wanted to date a girl, you'd have to give her something that basically means, I'm being serious, I'm not joking around. Love is not determined by ID bracelets, but it was a great piece of history to read. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Condition.
Excellent. Still smells like bubblegum.
That's not what mint condition means.
Give Mary my best.
Sure, that's totally not creepy.
According to him, this is a fact.
And Frio totally knows that Mr. Simon possibly being a homosexual is a fact, despite not having any interactions with him as far as we know. Also, this situation is the WWE Universe today. A rumor starts to spread, and everybody believes it is a fact without a second thought.
Then I will stand right beside you and fight.
Evelyn hints at a much more entertaining movie plot. Let's watch that instead of this.
Are you denying that you're a homosexual?
I'm not going to justify that question with an answer.
The acting is absolutely brilliant on the part of Ed Harris and Amy Madigan. How in the ever-loving fuck does word of two people possibly going steady spread that quickly to the point of literally everybody knowing about it in a time without social media on the internet, or the internet's existence in general?
Did I neglect to mention that Mary's last and longest relationship to date was with Ricky Brown?
Yes, you did, but even if you didn't forget to mention that, I still would not have cared.
If you're selling something, we're not interested.
You mean Mrs. Frio hasn't once met the staff of her own son's school? How? I know he's a snake, but I highly doubt that Ed is going to suddenly strike Evelyn down with an RKO out of nowhere. Or will he?
My guess is this community will care, and they won't appreciate you condoning it.
But that's literally the last thing Ed does. Sure, Mr. Simon ends up quitting his job, but Ed takes no action and is pretty much forgotten of after this sequence.
That was good.
You barely touched your food!
He even went so far as to threaten me.
Well, he is Randy Orton after all, so should we really be surprised?
He's just...
It's for the sake of the children that I won't deny it, true or not.
Did I mention before that the acting is absolutely brilliant on the part of Ed Harris and Amy Madigan? Probably did, but it's worth praising twice.
Maybe the class could get him a present or something.
Sure, a present is totally going to convince a teacher to reconsider quitting his job due to a situation that sadly is far beyond his control. In the words of Cinema Sins, the director said, "Let's give your character an apple to look more like an asshole." You know, I'm still trying to figure out how having/eating an apple makes you an asshole.
Take a walk, Reigns.
See you after school, Andy.
Damn, he didn't even need an apple to show that he's an asshole to his friend. No real friend just pieces out when a bully is threatening to attack the other friend.
Just walk away and nobody will know.
This works.
Enticing him to...
Are we positive that Mary Clear isn't related to the Cullens, considering she has that bogus vampire quickness?
Hi, Andy. I didn't see you.
Stalker confirmed.
How you doing? Good. So how you doing?
Did the movie seriously run out of awkward ideas and thought, screw it, let's just repeat the same scene from Mary's house. I'm sure nobody will notice. Guess what? I noticed. By this point in the film, Jason Frio was nothing but an extra in the background, despite the fact that he's the one that caused Mr. Simon to resign his job after the year ended.
Trying desperately not to sweat.
So Andy really did forget to wear that deodorant his mother reminded him to put on? Also, if you're worried so much about sweating, fake an injury or something.
So that he'd be the only guy without sweat rings when the world was coming to an end.
I know I probably said this so many times throughout the movie, but this narrator is perhaps the biggest sin of the entire film.
I'm your friend, Andy, but I'm not a moron.
Correction, you're Andy's friend, and you're a moron. Because like I said, no real friend just ditches the other when they're in trouble of getting their ass kicked.
Would you be friends with a moron?
Forget it.
That's Andy's way of saying, I already am friends with a moron. Get lost, asshole.
Or I'll tell Principal Kellner who stole $32 in quarters out of the Pepsi machine.
This also works. Ricky Brown may be the toughest bully in the school, but it's completely easy to get him to stop being a bully.
Am I gonna have to fight your mother next?
I bet the house on my mother, Ricky.
Savage!
Norman come?
Who? Oh, right, your best friend who told you to go to hell. Not gonna lie, I completely forgot about his existence in this film until his name was brought up again.
Our first act is Doris Gebbin.
The concert programs say otherwise because Mrs. Cranby just skipped over the first 5 acts and went straight to Doris, who was not supposed to perform until after the intermission. Did those 5 acts back out or not make it in time?
Wait, sorry.
Doris forgot to properly tune the upright bass prior to going on stage. Speaking as a musician myself, anytime I or any other bands went on stage, we always tuned up our instruments and had a brief practice session before going on stage. I know everybody probably didn't think of this, but I'm betting that this couple were late to the concert because they were having sex in the car.
He just won't give in, no matter what they do to him.
That's because Stanley would be a complete pussy if he gave in to the bullies, you stupid dumbass.
He'll be on soon.
In like the next 2 acts, and yet Norman somehow has time to reconsider his decision, travel to the school, and have a conversation with Stanley before it's his turn to go on stage.
Stanley has dignity.
Wait a minute, if you knew Stanley had dignity, then why did you condemn him for having dignity? This doesn't make any sense anymore. It was a good scene, and then it screwed up.
Janet Piccolo, who will twirl her baton.
Holy shit! From looking at the concert programs, Jenna was literally after Doris, which means that throughout the time Andy went to Norman's house to having a conversation with him, to getting all the way back to the school, Doris was performing on the upright bass. What, was she scheduled to perform for like 15 to 20 minutes or something?
Stars and stripes forever.
That's not what the program said. Look right here, and you can see that Jenna is to perform Maracle the Beautiful, not Stars and Stripes Forever.
Norman, I'm a singer. That's what I am.
Oh. Nope, still don't get why it's the title of the movie.
The guy can hardly walk and chew gum.
Dick. The beats heard in this drum solo are not in sync with what Tommy is actually playing. Hell, his solo probably sucks, and they added in beats and many jump cuts to make it seem like he's a god at drums. If you wanted to cast someone who could play the drums, I was available! Even the nods and headbanging from the crowd are not in sync with the actual music.
He doesn't sing nearly enough.
With the echo heard when Andy yelled at, I'm surprised nobody heard him. Hell, his voice sounded louder than the drums. Scene does not contain the entire crowd applauding for the bully getting his comeuppance. Also, finally...
Ricky, have you had a bowel movement today?
Mr. Simon is absolutely hilarious.
Shouldn't swear, Norman.
If I'm being honest, the recurring "you shouldn't swear" Norman line is one of the more annoying ones.
She held the faint wisps of my tender male ego in her hand.
Oh my god! Did you seriously have to say that?
How you doing?
Wrong advancement, dumbass.
Can I kiss you?
Ugh, you don't ask the girl if you can kiss her. That shows your lack of confidence.
Kissed. Oh!
You know what? This entire scene is just embarrassing and hard to watch, so I'm gonna say skip!
Oh, I like the time each kiss.
Even more proof that Mary Clear and her ways of dating every single boy in the school is some of the scariest things I've ever seen. Who the hell turns on a stopwatch every time they kiss someone? Question, did Randy Orton ever go to the papers like he said he would, or was he bluffing the entire time? And if that's the case, then why isn't Mr. Simon staying?
I am a writer.
Which, as I said before, we have all completely forgotten about. As a matter of fact, the two actual main characters of this film are Stanley and Mr. Simon. Sure, Andy is involved with the plot too, yet the movie made it seem like this was all about him, which it wasn't. Hey, is that a 90s Lincoln Town car I see in the background? I thought this movie was taking place in 1965.
There was still one question that had to be answered.
Actually, the real question that needs to be answered is, how the hell does Andy know where Mr. Simon lives? Like, seriously, I want to know that. There's never been a hint that these two have spoken one-on-one aside from the last month of school. Did nobody knock on doors in the 1960s? I can understand Jason Friel since he's a douchebag in this movie, but Andy's the polite protagonist.
Can I help you, Mr. Nickel?
What, does Mr. Simon have abilities to not make any noise prior to making himself heard? That's a wooden floor. How did Andy not hear him coming? Especially when Mr. Simon couldn't hear him the first time his name was called. Also, Mr. Simon is perfectly fine with having his former student show up at his house unannounced and without concern on how the hell his former student knows where he lives.
My wife. Mystery solved?
I'm pretty sure that Mr. Simon didn't once reference the rumor of him possibly being a homosexual to Andy.
You just need someone to tell you that you can.
Did I forget to mention that? You know what? You already know why I'm removing this in. Just as the movie has finished, nope! There's still more movie left. Even though Andy riding away on the bike should have been how the film ended. But instead, we're watching the next installment of Andy gets schooled by his father.
But please, just let me finish.
Oh, so this final scene was added just so Andy could stand up to his father. I wouldn't care about that, but all his father did was call him a jughead. It's not like he was an abusive father or something.
Okay.
This works! This is what happens with the characters as they progress into the present day as the end credits roll cliche. I'm honestly surprised that Mary Clear somehow hasn't been married as many times as Ric Flair has been a world champion based on the way she was portrayed in this film. Never heard from again? Well, I suppose that's a better way than straight up saying he died. Also, did Randy Orton go to the papers and complain about that too?